Okay, Erev Tov, good evening, everyone. We continue Gemara Masechet Berachot, Daf 2, like Tu B'Av. It was yesterday, but now we're going to do Tu B'Brachot, Daf Tet Vav and Masechet Berachot, where we are entering a Mishnah about three specific laws about the nature of the requirements and halacha of Kriyat Shema. Very important laws. Tonight's Gemara, I want to try to cover a lot of ground because there's really four concepts. It gets a bit wordy. So we're going to talk about it. Yeah, just a question. When you say Shema Yisrael, do you have to hear what you're saying? Yes. What's the other option? What? Ask Rabbi Yossi. Why ask Rabbi Yossi? You saw the Mishnah already? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, okay. That's going to be the discussion of our Mishnah. Very good. What is it? Maybe no. All right, that's the other option. If not, yes, no. Okay, so. Oh, very nice. Very good. Okay, that's going to come up in Masechet Berachot, the Lamed Aleph, talking about being able to hear yourself during a tefillah. There's this discussion about moving your lips during tefillah, for sure. This more specifically about Shema Yisrael. We got exposed to this on Daf Yud Gimel, if I'm not mistaken, about as we were discussing some of the laws of whether you're allowed to do it out of order. This discussion came up. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about a few items, but mostly tonight we're going to discuss a few different mitzvot, whether you have to hear them or not. So let's go ahead, see the Mishnah, and we're going to try to cover some ground tonight. Okay? B'shutchem, let's get started. Share screen. Let's go. Gemara Masechet Berachot, Daf 2, Daf Tet Vav Amud Aleph. If you're looking at the art scroll, it's the Mishnah on 15A-2. Hakoreh et Shema. One who reads the Shema, v'lo hishmi'a le'ozno, and it wasn't audible to his ears. Someone read the Shema and wasn't able to hear himself reading it. Yatsa, he fulfilled his obligation. Rabbi Yosef Omer lo yatsa, but Rabbi Yosef says he did not fulfill his obligation. Okay, so you say Shema Yisrael, and you can't hear yourself saying it. By the way, when I think about this, I always think about the kids who do Shema. They come up to Kanisa, and they come up to the Bima, and they say Shema Yisrael, and when it comes to Vichara, they just, for a good 2 lines, they're just waiting. They're just waiting. What are you waiting for? It's like a timeout, right? It's like a pit stop. You take a quick break, maybe you get a drink in the middle, and then you continue the Shema Yisrael. There's 2 lines that they don't say anything. And so this is what I think about. Here, we're talking about the first line of Shema, but that's the idea of saying Shema without even they're not even saying it, right? I mean, some of the kids aren't saying it, some of them are, but there's a requirement, as we're saying now, is that when you say Shema Yisrael, Adonai Echad, people whisper. When they whisper, you have to. The question is, what if you say it so low that you don't hear it? So machloket in our Mishnah. Hakoreh Shema v'lo yishmi'a le'ozno yatsa. The first opinion of our Mishnah, called the Tana Kama, says it's okay, you fulfilled your obligation. Because you said it. You said the words, Vidibarta, you said it, you fulfilled your obligation. Rabbi Yosef says, no, you must hear yourself. That's rule number 1 of our Mishnah. The first discussion is, if you said Shema without it being audible, machloket. Kara v'lo dikdek be'otiotea. Rule number 2. What happens if you read Shema, but you were not precise in pronouncing it? Which means you maybe swallowed some letters, you mumbled some of the words, you said it, but it wasn't so precise. Okay, and the Gemara is going to give us examples. I'll give you an example. The word is al levavecha. The word al ends with a lamed. The word levavecha starts with a lamed. So what happens if you sort of run the stop sign and you say al levavecha? Okay, how many lameds did I just say? Al levavecha. You made it a compound word, right? So that's an example of not being precise. Right? Al levavecha. There's other examples that the Gemara is going to get into, and we'll show you the halacha about different examples. But let's say you read the Shema and you read it fast. You weren't so precise with everything. What's the halacha? The answer is machloket. Rabbi Yosef Omer yatsa. Rabbi Yosef says you fulfilled your obligation. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo yatsa. Rabbi Yehuda says you did not fulfill your obligation. Now, incidentally, our Gemara is going to tell us that in the first rule, the first opinion was Rabbi Yehuda, right? When we say you said Shema and you didn't hear yourself, that the first opinion that says you fulfilled is Rabbi Yehuda. So when it comes to hearing, Rabbi Yehuda says you fulfilled if you didn't hear, and Rabbi Yehuda says you did not fulfill. When it comes to pronouncing it imprecisely, Rabbi Yosef says you fulfilled, and Rabbi Yehuda says you didn't fulfill. So they swap positions, right? Rabbi Yehuda is the one that is lenient for hearing. If you didn't hear it, it's fine. But Rabbi Yosef is the one that's lenient that if you didn't pronounce it, you weren't so precise in how you read it. He's the one that says it's fine. So they switch positions. Yes.
We say that if you didn't hear your own Shema, you know if I enunciated it properly.
Sorry. Oh, no. Okay. So first of all, these two things don't have to be happening at the same time, right? It could be that he requires you. Okay, it's a good question. How could Rabbi Yehuda require you to enunciate everything and then not hear yourself? Okay, if I say, I stop between al levavecha, I'm making sure to differentiate those. Whatever else we give as examples of doing it, you pronounce it the right way, you just can't hear yourself. Or maybe more, a better example would be, you're in a very loud room where you can't hear yourself. You ever put these AirPods on, and then you're standing by the train, and you try to bring the volume up, and then all of a sudden my phone says you're going to go deaf in about 4 minutes. Did you ever get that notification or no? It says the high decibels is very, very loud. Why? Because it's so loud outside. So maybe it talks about like you're by a train station. So you're saying it, but you can't hear yourself, or it's very loud wherever you are. So that could be another example. Okay? Rule number 3 of our Mishnah. Hakorel mafreya. If you read the Shema out of order, which means the actual words, not the paragraphs, but if you read the words of Shema out of order, lo yatsa, you do not fulfill your obligation. No machloket. Everyone agrees. This isn't a game of, I said the word mezuzot, al, uchtavtam, ukshartam, letotafot. Just saying the words out of order, or even saying it, the lines out of order. Going out of order, lo yatsa. You did not fulfill your obligation. It's not a machloket. So you see what's happening. If you read Shema and you didn't hear, Rabbi Yehuda says you fulfilled, Rabbi Yosef says you didn't fulfill. If you read it imprecisely, Rabbi Yosef now says you fulfilled, Rabbi Yehuda says you didn't fulfill. And if you read it out of order, nobody says you fulfilled your obligation. No good. Going out of order. Rule number 4, kara v'ta'a. Let's say you're reading the Shema and then you catch yourself making a mistake. Yachzor lemakom sheta'a. So go back to the place that you made the mistake. Okay? Go back to the place. What is this implicitly telling you? That if you read and you made a mistake, you don't need to go back to the beginning. Right? So let's say I skipped a line. You know, this happens a lot with because in the first line you have the second one you don't. So very often you skip a line. Okay, if I skipped a line, just go back to the last place that was correct. You don't have to go back to the beginning of the Shema Yisrael. That's the last rule of our Mishnah. So these are the 4 rules of our Mishnah, and we're gonna delve into them into depth. Yes, question.
What about switching the parshiot?
Yeah. No. Excellent question.
You didn't mention it earlier.
This was a topic that came up in our Gemara. I don't remember where. There was a discussion of the Gemara where we said that if you say the paragraphs out of order, you fulfill your obligation. Okay, you do fulfill your obligation. Here, when we say and you didn't fulfill your obligation, that's if you're reading either it's the lines out of order, lines within a paragraph, or according to Rashi, it's if you're actually reading it in reverse order. But if you read the parshiot out of order, you know where this came up? It came up there. It came up in okay, very good. It came up in 2 places. It came up in the discussion where we said, very good. It came up in the discussion of if someone is reading the Mishnah that says Haya Koreh Torah. Yeah, exactly. So Haya Koreh B'Torah v'higia zman hamikra im kiven libo yatsa. If you have kavanah, you fulfill your obligation. How is that possible? How is it possible if you're because how is it possible that you're reading it and as you're reading it, you weren't thinking about Shema, you were thinking about something else. So it could be you were just reading from a Sefer Torah to check the Sefer Torah and you read it and it went out of order. So there's an example. Another place where this comes up is there was a whole big discussion about the Berachot of Kriyat Shema. And we spoke about what happens if you say the Berachot of Kriyat Shema out of order. There's a machloket about whether that you fulfill that or not. But I think what we said is the Berachot out of order, you have a discussion with the parashiyot themselves. Honestly, I should have looked it up beforehand. It's something that we did. We did it recently, but it seems like lahalacha, if you do the paragraphs out of order, you fulfill your obligation. But if you read the words out of order, you don't. According to Rashi, Korela Mafreya, Rashi tells us in Daf Yud Gimel, is reading the words out of order. So Bisharecha, Al, Mezuzot, Uchtavtam, going like backwards, going in reverse order. Rashi says that's when you're not Yatzah. Rabbeinu Yonah says, of course you're not fulfilling your obligation. You're saying gibberish. You're saying words out of order that make zero sense. That's not what the Mishnah is telling you. You don't need the Mishnah to tell you that if you read that out backwards, you don't fulfill the obligation. Rabbi Yonah says, even if you read the lines out of order, you say, if you read it that way, you don't fulfill the obligation. That's what the Mishnah means. But to say that you're reading in reverse order, you don't fulfill it. Of course, that's not the case. You know that the Mishnah. So, but it might be that according to Rashi, that if you read the lines out of order, you might fulfill the obligation. Okay, so regardless, I think La Halacha will say that if you read the paragraphs out of order, you fulfill. Okay, good. Okay, 4 rules of the Mishnah. Go. Rule number 1, or case number 1, sorry. Audibility, right? Whether you could hear yourself. Let's say I read Shema and I don't hear myself. What's the rule? Very good. Rabbi Yehuda says you fulfill, even though it doesn't say his name. The Gemara will attribute it to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you fulfill. Rabbi Yosef says you don't. Very good. Case number 2? Diktek be'otiotia, pronouncing precisely. Okay. What's the halacha if you did not? Rabbi Yosef now is lenient and says yatsa. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that's strict and says lo yatsa. Okay. Case number 3. That was the diktek. Sorry. The mafreya, out of order. Very good. Rule. Everyone agrees no good. And case number 4. If you mess up, you don't have to go back to the beginning, which let's say, for example, there are times of the Amidah, like if you say during the Aseret Yimei Teshuvah, if you say, we're getting into that time of year already, before you know it's going to be Rosh Hashanah. But if you say Ha'el HaKadosh, when you should be saying HaMelech HaKadosh, the halacha is you have to go back to the beginning. But if you mess up in Shema, you don't have to go back to the beginning. You just have to go back to where you left off. The last place where you're confident that you read correctly. Okay, good. Let's go. We're now going to ask the source. First, we're going to discuss the source of this audibility rule. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Tonight's Gemara is all going to be about having to hear yourself. Gemara. My Ta'amad Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef was the one that said that if you don't hear yourself, no good. Why? Mishum dichtiv, because the Mishnah said, the Gemara explains, because the Torah says Shema. Because the very mitzvah of Shema says, you have to hear it. Hashma lo'oznecha, mashata motzi mipicha. You have to make it hurt to your ears, that which is coming out of your mouth. So Rabbi Yosef says that if you don't hear the Shema, you don't fulfill the obligation, because Shema is requiring you to hear. Shema means listen, it means to hear. So if you don't hear, you don't fulfill the obligation. The Tanakama said, okay, so what does Rabbi Yehuda say to that? What does the Tanakama hold? Shema bechol lashon shata shomea. Shema does not mean that you have to hear it. Shema means you have to understand it, which allows you to say the Shema Yisrael in any language. If you wanted to say the Shema, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you wanted to say Shema in English, you're allowed to. How do you know? Because it says Shema. Shema means understand. Okay, whatever language you understand, you could say it in that language that you understand. Shema means both. Shema could mean physically hear, and it could be mentally to understand, right? obviously, if the simple understanding of the word is not to hear. The simple understanding is when it says Shema Yisrael, listen Israel, listen. Okay, so you say, so I listen. Like, what kind of a requirement could it be to listen? Exactly. Lahavin, really, or it means leitbonen, means to consider. Shema Yisrael, consider the following, Israel. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Think about the following. This should be something that's on your mind. So it really means to understand. So Rabbi Yosef says, okay, let's just do one more line. Rabbi Yosef, okay, so according to Rabbi Yosef, can you do it in any language? He says, yes. Tarti Shema Mina. Rabbi Yosef says, I'm learning two things. The word Shema has two implications. Number one, it means understand. So I could do it in any language. Number two, it means to hear. So if you don't hear, you don't fulfill your obligation. So the word Shema has this dual meaning. It means to hear and it means to listen. Hear and to understand. So what does Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda says, what I'm learning from this word is that you have to understand, which means you could say it's permitting you to read it in any language. This is a word that makes this mitzvah easier for you by saying, hey, any language. Or I guess it could make it more complicated in that you must understand it. You need to use your brain to understand it. Not your ears, but your brain. Whereas Rabbi Yosef says, yeah, you have to use your brain, and so you could do it in any language. But it also means you have to use your ears. So Rabbi Yosef is requiring two things from the word Shema. Both the meanings of Shema, he's saying it could have used a different word, but the fact that it uses this means that it requires you to both hear and to understand. So it can be done in any language, but you also have to hear. And if you don't fulfill your obligation.
I have a hypothetical question now, but if someone they call themselves an atheist and say, I don't believe in God. I'm in a place where I'm forced to say Shema, a Jew, forced to say Shema Israel. They say Shema Israel, they pronounce all day, they said Allah, they heard it, everything, but they truly don't believe in what they just said. They've understood the words. Are they
Very good.
as well?
Someone says Shema, but doesn't believe it. Do they fulfill the obligation? I guess why does it matter? Is your question of does the person go to Gehinnom or not?
Are they getting the scar of fulfilling the mitzvah Shema?
Sheila Tova. I don't know. I guess let Ribono Shel Olam do Hesab Ketab with the person. What is it?
Or what if they just saying it and they're just reading it in English as it would be in Hebrew? Shema Israel.
Oh, so there you're saying. So that is like that's transliterating, and that for sure is fine. For sure, if I read.
But you're not understanding the words, you're saying Hebrew words in English.
Okay, excellent point. The Shema Yisrael, we've discussed this, that you need to understand. And not just that, there's machloket about how much of it you need to understand. Do you remember the three-way machloket? What is it that, four-way machloket? Four-way machloket, yeah, what is it?
Just the first line or the first part or the first second or all everything.
Yeah, basically. It's either the line of Shema Yisrael or the second opinion that we saw, I think it was Rabbi Eliezer, that says, until Alevavecha. You have to know until Alevavecha, because Levavecha means you have to understand. Then the next opinion is no, the whole first paragraph. And then the last one is also the second paragraph, because it says Alavavchem in the second paragraph.
You need to know the second.
Okay, so no, we ended up, yeah, there was an opinion that says you need to understand both the first and second and think about, but you only need to verbalize the second one, is what we said. Yeah, very good. This was on Daf Yud Gimel also. This is a lot of the things from this page takes us back to Yud Gimel. Yeah. 13A4. Okay, very good. Did you just look it up right now, or you remember? That's a different game. I just said Yud Gimel. You said 13A4. It's like you made your work exponentially more difficult to know the article page. Yeah, very good. Yeah, John. What was it?
If you can't hear it, you understand it, you're deaf.
Oh!
Comes up right after, no?
Okay, very good. Okay, so now we're gonna get into this question of the examples I'm not hearing. One I said is, let's say you don't want to wake up your let's say you're saying Shema Yisrael. Rama, I feel like when you say Shema, you have kavana. Okay, so let's say you have to say Shema and your wife already fell asleep, and you're gonna say it so loud that it's gonna get you into Shalom Bayit issues. So what do? So you read it so low, but you're reading it so low that you can't hear. Okay, so there's an option of someone who can hear himself. He can hear himself, just that he's bringing it on a lower level. Or another example I said is a guy who was at the train station, where you can hear yourself, it's just that it's so loud. But now we're going to talk about, what about if someone can't hear himself, someone who's deaf? If you're requiring him to have to hear himself, what you're doing is you're telling him there's no way for him to fulfill the mitzvah of Shema. And not just that, there's many things that he will never be able to do.
Say the words. He doesn't know what to say.
Why does he know? So you're saying a person.
They have to hear how to say, agree to say Hebrew.
Okay.
Say the words.
Okay.
Oh, maybe they
Love that.
they became that person.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's different types. Okay, excellent question that Andrew is bringing up. There is Ilem is someone that can't speak. Teresh is someone who can't hear. But if someone is born with an issue, they usually go hand in hand. And you're absolutely correct. And that's actually something that the Talmud is going to explain to us. There's Cheresh hamdaber ve'eno shomea. There's a Cheresh that speaks and doesn't hear. Cheresh she'eno medaber ve'eno shomea. It doesn't speak and doesn't hear. So this distinction that you're discussing is actually something that comes up in Halakha about a person that can hear without speaking. But that's exactly right. So okay, good, very good. We have some of the good points. Let's go, guys. We have a good amount of time. We need to get in. We need to cover some ground. Let's keep the questions limited to on the topic. Let's go. Tanan Hatam. Sorry. Before we do this, I need to define a few terms, and I need your help to defining it. And just because you guys, we were speaking about Excel, we're going to do some Excel files right now. Okay. Let's say I have a requirement. Okay. I could tell you, you have to do something. You need something. You need this requirement. You need to be able to hear yourself. You need to be able to hear it. Or I could say you don't have to hear it. Okay. But then there's something in between. If I say you must hear it, you must hear yourself, or I can say, no, you don't have to hear yourself. There's something in between. And that's going to break out into the words lechatchila and bediavad. Okay? Lechatchila bediavad. And I'm giving this to you in the Sephardi pronunciation of lechatchila and bediavad. In Ashkenazi or in Ashkenaz, what would you say? Lechatchila and bediavad. Okay, what does the word lechatchila mean? Ideally, okay. Okay, so let's use the words that you said. Ideally, from the beginning, they have a very special word for it. Abenitio. Where are my Italian friends at? You're Italian? Oh, it's the name of a company. Okay, that's a sick company. I'm going to start a company called lechatchila. Okay. Abenito, from the beginning, is derived from the Latin initio, abative, singular. So you don't know what the word all you do is you take lechatchila and you translate it into Latin. Why don't you just do it into English? What's the purpose of translating it into Latin if all it means is from the beginning? Okay, whatever. I'm not in the translation business. Okay, so am I sharing my screen? No, maybe it's better I'm not. Okay, here, let's share screen. Okay, so lechatchila means ideally from the beginning, you are required to do something. Okay. Now, what is b'di'evet? What does b'di'evet mean? After the fact. That's an excellent way of saying it. After the fact. Actually, the word avad means like it happened already. Avad means masha avad. What happened, happened. So b'di'avad in a situation in which it already happened, after the fact. Excellent. Okay? So what you might say is, I require you to hear yourself saying Shema. That's the lechatchila. You have to hear yourself. Okay? But in a situation where you didn't, b'di'avad, I say it's okay. So you see how there's a difference between, I say, if you heard yourself saying Shema, or you must hear yourself, and if you don't, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Or I must say, you must hear yourself, but if you don't, it's okay. That's b'di'evet or b'di'avad, it's fine. Or I could say, lechatchila, you don't even need to. You never need to. Even before the fact, you don't need to. You know what? I think we should translate this as before the fact. Okay? Or I could say, or I could say you are not required to do something. Actually, I think that's more that's more precise in this case. So I can say lechatchila, you don't even lechatchila, you don't need to hear yourself. Okay, so let's give this in 3 examples of, okay, am I required to hear myself saying the Shema? So what I could say is, even lechatechila, no. Okay, this is one option. And then another one is I could say lechatechila, yes, but bediaved or bediavad, no. Okay, what does this mean? What does this situation mean?
Beginning have to, but if you
did it, it's okay.
If you did it, it's okay.
You have to try to.
You have to try to, but if you ended up not hearing yourself, it's okay. You don't need to go back.
But it's a lower level.
No. These are different types of requirements. One requirement is you don't need to. This is Rabbi Yehuda. It's like, no, you don't need to. Yeah, well, who said you have to do it? Then there's another opinion, or maybe it's not Rabbi Yehuda yet. Another one is to say, I required you to, but if you don't, it's okay. Rabula. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna say the same thing. And then the last one could be like, even bedieved, yes. Meaning, am I required to hear myself saying Shema? Even bedieved, yes. What does that mean?
Even after the fact.
You have, even after the fact, you have to go back and do it again. That means that means there's no distinction between lechatchila and bedieved, right? Like, you need to do this. Okay, there are times where, okay, you shouldn't, but if you did it, it's fine. Okay, you should. There's many examples of this thing, of this distinction between lechatchila and bedieved. Is everyone clear on the concept of lechatchila and bedieved? Because we're going to get into something detailed here. Yes. Even after the fact, meaning I said Shema and I didn't hear myself, I still require you to hear yourself, which means even b'diavad lo yatsa, you did not fulfill your obligation, you have to go back and read it again. So really, maybe another way of saying this is am I required to hear myself saying Shema? Okay, now if I say I did not hear myself saying Shema, did I fulfill my obligation? So based on these 3 things, if the one that says you're not required to hear yourself ever, even lechatchila, so if you did not hear yourself, did you fulfill your obligation? Yes, because he doesn't have any requirement for you. Now, the one that says lechatchila, you have to hear yourself, but b'diavad you don't. So here's a situation where I did not hear myself. Did I fulfill my obligation? No, the answer is yes. Yeah, you're right. But the answer, I did not hear myself. B'diavad, you fulfill your obligation. If I say that even b'diavad, you're required to hear yourself. So if I did not hear myself saying Shema, did I fulfill my obligation? The answer is no. You get it? Is that clear or no? Ask if you, yeah, question?
Second, yes, but no. If I'm like at the train station and I know I won't hear myself, am I allowed to say, "Oh, maybe it's okay," and do it?
Okay, you're asking a good question. You're getting a little bit too complex for this concept though. Here, I'm just trying to show how there's a difference between before the fact and after the fact. Can you abuse it? Of course, you could abuse it. A person could say, "I know that if I do it, then it's gonna be okay. So then, lechatchila, I'm not gonna do it because I know okay." Then you're playing games with Hashem. But in a situation like that, you might have where halakha would say, no, we're going to knas you, we'll fine you, and we'll say for you in your situation is not okay. You know, there's examples of, let's say, for example, you mixed, are you allowed to take a pot of meat and splash in some dairy in there? Oh, if it's less than a 60s, no less than a 60s. If it already happened, b'diavad, you already splashed some in. So if it's less than 2% or it's less than 1%, we'll say it's fine. You don't need to throw out your whole pot. But that doesn't mean you're allowed to add a shorak of dairy into every single pot of meat, because that's the lechatchila. You get the difference? So I'll tell you like this. There's a rule that if you have a pot of meat, you have your cholan chodav, And if you have some dairy falls into it, well, halakha says in many situations, but halakha says if it's less than 1/60th, which is less than, let's say, 2%, it's okay. You don't need to throw out the pot. You're allowed to eat the pot. Okay? There's many exceptions, but this is the general rule. So that's telling you, bedi eved, when it already happened that the milk spilled in, it's mutar, it's permitted. But lechatchila, before the fact, are you allowed to pour dairy in? The answer is no. So now what if someone says, well, I know that bedi eved is going to be okay, so oops, no. Then halakha says no good. Because when you say oops, meaning if you care, if you care about the halakha, so you wouldn't do that. And if you don't care about that, so then eat it anyway. Like who's telling you? There's no halakha police in your home. So you want to do it, you want to do it. But this is improper. Doing a lechatchila, relying on your b'diavad is not allowed. So that I hope that answers the question of, yeah, you're right, it depends on your intention, but to keep it simple. Good? Good, yes?
Obligation of saying Shema before you say Shema.
So if I say, you ask me, do I need to hear myself? And I say, absolutely not. You say, is it better to? I'm going to say, no, it's not better to. Even lechatchila, you are not required to hear yourself. What does that mean? That means even before the fact, when you're trying to establish what is the ideal way, let's say I tell you you're not required, so you're not required. Let's say you say, do I have to say Shema 5 times? And I'll say, no. You're saying, so are you telling me, Rabbi, are you telling me that if I only said it 2 times, it's okay, but I really should do it 5 times? Like, no, I'm not saying that. Even before the fact, you are not required to say Shema 5 times. You're only required to say it 2 times, right? So that's what lechatchila is. So here, what we're going to start to ask ourselves now is we had this whole discussion of hakoret Shema v'lo yishmeh le'ozno yatsa or lo yatsa. Someone read Shema and they did not they did not hear themselves. One opinion says he fulfilled, the other one says he did not fulfill. Our question is going to say, okay, the one that says you fulfilled, would he require you before the fact? Would he say it's better to? Or maybe he's going to say, no, you just no requirements. This is really what we're going to start to get into. You get it? So going back to the Mishnah, how can someone tell me, how was the Mishnah presented? How was it formulated? So the Mishnah starts off with a case. What is the case that the Mishnah tells us? I'm going to read for you the case. Let me go up.
So you say it, you don't hear it.
Very good. Hakoret Shema v'lo yishmeh le'ozno yatsa. One recites Shema, did not hear it. One opinion says fulfilled, the other one says he did not fulfill.
He didn't hear it.
Yes, he didn't hear it.
Like he didn't want to hear it.
So the question is, that first opinion that says you read Shema and you didn't hear it, it's fine. Okay, is this a lechatchila case or is this a b'diavad case?
Still saying you should try to hear it.
Very good. You follow? So let me ask: is our Mishnah a lechatchila case or b'diavad case? Lechatchila? B'diavad. Why do you say it's b'diavad? Because the Mishnah presents the case as something that already happened. Hakoret Shema v'lo yishmeh le'ozno. Someone read Shema and did not hear it. The first opinion says, okay, Rabula, you fulfilled your obligation. Okay, so that's formulated as a b'diavad case. It doesn't, Itai, how would it be formulated if this was a din lechatchila? If lechatchila, you're not required, how would it be formulated? Something like, hakoret Shema eino sarich le'ashmi'a le'ozno. He's not required to hear it. That's what it could say. But once you say, I fulfilled, I didn't fulfill, okay, you're telling me you fulfilled, but that's b'diavad, you fulfilled. You get the distinction?
Between yatsa and lo yatsa, it's very chayav and no chayav.
Or sarich, no sarich. Yeah, exactly. Chayav, no chayav. Yeah.
General Gemara rules, whenever the rabbi answers yatsa, that's b'diavad always.
The language of yatsa means you fulfilled, which is something that happened after the fact, right? It doesn't mean that it has to be, but that's what the formulation means. Could it be that even before the fact? It could be, but you see why you need to make this distinction. Okay, so like, if let's say, for example, give me an example of something that in your everyday lives that you should do it one way, but if you didn't, you still fulfill your obligation. Give me an example. We should be able to think of something. Say it again. Shomer Shabbat. Okay, you're getting me to complex halachot here. I don't even know what you're talking about. But yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay, but yeah, let's think about that. Let's think about this situation. Okay, can you say kiddush on beer? Okay, let's say someone picked up a thing of beer. Remember, we did our whole demonstration. We did two beer. All of a sudden, someone comes Friday night and he says kiddush, and he says borei peri hagefen. Did you fulfill your obligation or not? Obviously, you shouldn't. So you see, if I pick up a cup of beer and I say, I want to say borei peri hagefen. No, of course not. The chatchila, you should not say it. Oh, okay. But that's a different question of b'diavad. Let's say I already did say it. Did I fulfill my obligation? Or the same is true opposite, right? It's the bracha of she'akol. She'akol is probably the best example. Okay? I pick up a cup of wine. Can I say, I like the ring of she'akol more. The cadence rhymes more. I want to say the bracha of she'akol on this. What? You can't do that. So lechatchila, the bracha is borei peri hagefen. But b'diavad, after the fact, if I already said she'akol, did I fulfill my obligation or not? So you would say, yatsa, you fulfilled your obligation. But before it, so there's a difference. There's an example of where the word yatsa would come into play. Okay? Good? Good. I want to make sure we have time to see this Gemara tonight. Okay, here we go. Everyone good with the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef and the concepts of lechatchila and b'diavad? Let's go. Tanan Hatam, we learned in the Mishnah. Mishnah in Masechet Terumot. Cheresh, one who is deaf. Hamdaber ve'eno shomea. Qualifying for Andrew's purposes, this Mishnah is qualifying that we're talking about a cheresh that speaks, but cannot hear himself. Lo yitrom. You should not be the one to take off terumah. Have your spouse do it. Have your brother do it. Have your friend do it. You shouldn't be the one to take off terumah. Why? Because when you take off terumah, you need to say a bracha. And guess what? You're not going to be able to hear yourself saying the bracha. So you should not be the one to say the bracha on taking off terumah. Ve'im taram. But if you did it, b'diavad, terumato terumah, then his terumah works. Okay, here you have a very good, clear Mishnah that tells us rules of the chatchila and b'diavad. Because what does it say? If you're going to say the bracha of terumah and you won't hear yourself because this person is deaf, don't do it. So the chatchila, should he do it? No. B'diavad, if he did it work? Yes. Clear? So, no. That concept is there. You see, this person who is deaf, don't take. Do you guys know what terumah is? Should I explain what terumah is? Terumah is you have a certain amount of grain, you have to take a piece of it and you have to give it to the Kohen. When you take a piece of that and give it to the Kohen, you say a bracha. So the person who does this has to verbalize a bracha. It's saying, okay, if the person who's doing this is deaf, don't do it yourself. Give it to someone else to say, so that they can actually hear themselves saying the bracha. But if you did it, it's fine. Rabule. B'diavad, it's okay. Fine. So now the Gemara is going to say, Man Tana, which opinion is this? Cheresh hamdaber ve'eno shomea, that a deaf person who could speak but can't hear, di'avad in, after the fact, but di'avad, yes, he fulfilled his obligation of terumah, but lechatchila, lo. But before the fact, how do they translate it? After the fact, it's fine, but abinitio, he may not do so. Which opinion is that? Is that Rabbi Yehuda or is it Rabbi Yosef? Amar Rav Chisda says, Rabbi Yosef. It's Rabbi Yosef. What did Rabbi Yosef say in our Mishnah? It's no good. Even b'diavad, someone read the Shema, didn't hear himself, he says no good. But here, the guy took off Truma, he didn't hear himself, he's saying it's good. And we're saying it's going to be the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. How so? Here we go. Ditnan, hakoreh et Shema v'lo yishme'al le'ozno yatsa divrei Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah here is saying, the Berachot, really quoting the Mishnah, is saying that if someone says Shema and didn't hear, he fulfilled his obligation. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef Omer lo yatsa. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yosef says no. Even b'diavad I did not fulfill the obligation. Ad kan lo kama Rabbi Yosef lo yatsa. With Shema, Rabbi Yosef says you did not fulfill your obligation even b'diavad. Ela gabe kriyat Shema deoraita, because Shema is from the Torah. Since Shema is a requirement from the Torah, then he's going to require you to hear yourself. And even b'diavad, he says you did not fulfill your obligation. About teruma, but when it comes to teruma, mishum berachahu, the whole reason why we tell a deaf person that it's better for you not to do it is because of the bracha, not because of the action. The action of separating someone who's deaf could do it. What's the issue? The issue is he's not going to hear himself say the bracha. But that ubracha derabanan, the requirement, the requirement to say bracha is only rabbinic. The Torah says you have to take off truma. It doesn't say you have to do it with the bracha. It says the bracha that a person says on taking off truma is rabbinic. It's a rabbinic requirement. So Rabbi Yosef says by Shema you're required to hear yourself, and if you did it without hearing yourself, no good, because even b'diavad is a problem. But by teruma, he would say if you did it without hearing yourself, it's fine. Why? Because the action of doing teruma is fine. Just you didn't hear yourself. Okay, that's the rabbinic piece. So you shouldn't do it lachatchila, but b'diavad it's okay. So now what we're doing is we're saying that Rabbi Yosef in our Mishnah requires you to hear yourself saying Shema even b'diavad, so much so that if you already did it and you didn't hear yourself, you do not fulfill the obligation. But for teruma, the bracha of teruma, he only requires it lechatchila, to hear yourself. But b'diavad, if you already took off teruma and you didn't hear yourself, it's fine. Good? We're just getting started. Yes.
Just like try to understand a situation where, like b'diavad is okay. Is it if the person who's deaf doesn't know he's not allowed to do it? Not allowed to recite it?
Correct.
That's the only
Correct. It's the first time he grew grain. He learned about this in school, and he didn't know that he's not allowed to say it. Or let's say he had an injury. Let's say he's been doing this every single day of his life. He got an injury and he had surgery. Now he can't hear anymore. He went to do his job and he's saying it. Then all of a sudden, a year down the line, someone asks him, like, who's taking off your truma, by the way? He says, I'm still doing it. What? Okay, I still have that food at home. Like, is that food that I still have, is that a problem? Or does the teruma count? Okay, we say b'diavad yatsa. You fulfilled your teruma to teruma. The teruma worked. That's the situation of b'diavad, which is going back to what Jaden said before of like, yeah, intention matters. But it's very important. B'diavad is after the fact, assuming there isn't like malicious intent here. Yes.
Also, the mitzvah of saying Shema is saying the Shema hearing, but this is just like the mitzvah to separate the Shema and then say bracha. What if it was a bracha deoraita, but you did the action, but you didn't say the bracha? Okay.
Okay, excellent. Okay, Andrew just made a very, very beautiful distinction that the Gemara is going to get into. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Very good. Andrew said, okay, let's see what's the mitzvah of Shema? To say Shema. And according to Rabbi Yosef, part of that is to hear it. So you have the mitzvah from the Torah to say Shema, which includes hearing it. So even b'diavad, you do not. If you said it and you didn't hear, even b'diavad, you do not fulfill the obligation. What's the mitzvah of teruma? To take off physically teruma. The bracha is not that mitzvah. The bracha is something rabbinic that's been added to it. So if I don't hear this rabbinic side, okay, from the Torah I fulfilled my obligation, and that's why Rabbi Yosef says you fulfill the obligation. But Andrew said, but what about if the bracha is from the Torah? Give me an example. Birkat Hamazon. Birkat Hamazon. Birkat Hamazon is a bracha that is rabbinic. No, it's not rabbinic. It's from the Torah. It's a Torah requirement. It's a deoraita. So in a situation like that, do you say this distinction of, oh, okay, before the fact, it's fine. You should do it, but after the fact, it's a problem. Okay, give me an example of where you could have b'diavad. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have one person is chazan saying Birkat Hamazon for everyone. Okay, and the person who's deaf knows how to say it beautifully, so he's saying it. He says it, he can't hear himself. He says it for everyone, and they all answer amen. And then afterwards, they come in and say, like, you did not fulfill your obligation. And if you did, as the chazan did not fulfill the obligation, no one fulfilled their obligation. Do we have to all say Birkat Hamazon again? This is an after the fact type of question. Okay, so yeah, very good, very good. You're gonna have this type of question by shofar as well. But there's not a bracha. But yeah, exactly. You need the person who is being yotzei yidei chala for others. He needs to be chayav and be able to fulfill his obligation himself. If he's not fulfilling his obligation, you can't fulfill it for other people. So there's an example. Okay, excellent. The Gemara is going to get into Berachot Hamazon, which is an example of a bracha that's from the Torah. Okay, good. You guys are bringing up all of the good points. I know we're talking about a lot of things, and it gets there's a lot of topics here, but there's a lot of core concepts here. I don't remember that in our shir we ever like really broke it down. So it's a very important concept in halacha. And Itai, I think Itai brought it a nice way that when you say the word yatsa or lo yatsa, I fulfilled or I did not fulfill, that is a b'di'avad type of formulation. That's saying, yeah, you did it or no, you didn't. That's after the fact. Chayav or eno chayav is something that you're required to do before the fact. Or tzarich, eno tzarich is something you're required to do beforehand. So when you say hakoret shema tzarich la'ashmi'a le'ozno, that sounds like I'm required to do it. Hashma le'ozecha ma shetem motzim b'micha. This here, what you're saying, that's all before the fact type of formulation. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so here's what happened. We have our Mishnah. Now we have another Mishnah about Trumot. Trumot clearly says, Lechatchila, you should not take off, the deaf person should not take Trumah. B'diavad, it works. We want to line it up with either Rabbi Yosef or Rabbi Yehuda, and we're lining it up with Rabbi Yosef. But Rabbi Yosef in our Mishnah says, even B'diavad, it's a problem. Here in Trumot, B'diavad, it's okay. The difference is, our Mishnah is a deoraita case. For the case from the Torah, requirement of saying Shema from the Torah, whereas the Mishnah of Trumot is a saying the bracha, which is only rabbinic. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to do another case now. Umimai de Rabbi Yosehi. Why is it that our case in Masechet Terumah that tells us lachatchila a deaf person shouldn't do the Terumah, but b'diavad if he did, it's fine. Why do you have to say it's Rabbi Yosef? Dilma Rabbi Yehudahi. Maybe it could be Rabbi Yehuda. What did Rabbi Yehuda say about Shema if you said it without hearing? Sorry? It's good. You fulfilled your obligation. So, if anything, maybe Masechet Truma about the Truma case should be Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because he said about Shema after the fact, it's fine. Okay, but maybe before the fact he requires you to hear it. And then you could say the same by Shema. Before the fact he requires you to hear, but after the fact he says no. Maybe that's what the situation is. Maybe he's saying by Shema that di'avid, in a situation where you already said it and you didn't hear, you fulfill the obligation, but lechatchila, no, but lechatchila, you should try to hear yourself. So you teda, and I have a proof that our Mishnah is a b'di'avid case. Diktani, as our Mishnah says, hakoreh. Hakoreh means one who's reading it. It's after the fact type of case. The whole Mishnah that Rabbi Yosef says is allowed is a b'di'evet situation. The guy read Shema and didn't hear, and Rabbi Yosef says it's fine. Okay, it's fine. B'di'evet, b'lachatchila, you should try to hear yourself. Same thing with Truma. So say b'di'evet, if you took off the Truma without hearing yourself, it's fine. But b'lachatchila, before the fact, you should try to hear yourself. So why are you lining up this Mishnah and Truma about Trumot with Rabbi Yosef and saying, oh, difference between Daret and the Rabbanan? Here, it's a requirement from the Torah. Here's a requirement from the rabbis. Simple. Just say it's all Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, in all cases, requires you to hear. But if you didn't hear, he says it's fine. You could say it that way. So now the Gemara says, Amri, hi diktani hakoreh. You know why? That's not how it's going to be lined up. But the fact that our Mishnah uses the formulation of b'di'evet and says hakoreh, one who already read Shema, Rabbi Yehuda says the same even if you didn't. Rabbi Yehuda even lechatchila says you don't need to. That's what we were saying now. Rabbi Yehuda does not require you to hear yourself, but it formulates it as a b'di'evet case to teach you how strong and extreme the opinion of Rabbi Yosef is. De'amar di'avid namilo, who says that even b'di'evet, you said Shema, but you didn't hear yourself. Even after you said it, you did not fulfill the obligation. The reason it was formulated as a b'di'evet case is to teach you the extreme of Rabbi Yosef. But the Rabbi Yehuda, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, afilu lechatchila nami yatsa. Even before the fact, you're not required to hear yourself. Okay? So this is how we want to say it. We want to say that our Mishnah you're gonna pin the two opinions at opposites. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't require you to hear yourself. Lechatchila b'diavad does not require it, doesn't believe in it, and Rabbi Yosef always requires it. Lechatchila and even b'diavad. Make them two extreme opinions. Extreme meaning how there's no b'diavad case in the middle. And then our Mishnah of Trumot is going to has to line up with Rabbi Yosef. It can't line up with Rabbi Yehuda because Rabbi Yehuda does not require you to hear yourself even for Shema. So he would not require you to hear yourself for Truma. Okay? So that's case number one. So b'may okimta, so how are you going to establish this Mishnah and Masechet Trumot? Rabbi Yosef. You want to say it's Rabbi Yosef. I have a problem. What's my problem? Andrew's Mishnah. We have a Braita, so now I'm going to bring you another source. Another source that says, lo, when it comes to Berachot Hamazon, the Tanya, it says, Lo yivarech adam Berachot Hamazon belibo. Don't say Berachot Hamazon in your heart. V'im berach, but if you did, yatsa, you fulfilled your obligation. Okay? This is classic lechatchila b'di'eved formulation. When you're saying Berachot Hamazon, don't say it to yourself. Don't say it in your heart. Don't say it in your mind. Lechatchila. But b'di'avad, if you did, you fulfilled your obligation. Okay? So who is this? You tell me. Rabbi Yehuda, we said that after the fact and even before the fact doesn't require you to hear yourself for Shema. So it can't be him because he doesn't make this requirement at all. So it's got to be Rabbi Yosef. But what did I say about Rabbi Yosef? That even b'di'evet I did not fulfill your obligation. Here it's saying b'di'evet you did fulfill your obligation. And by Terumot, you said, Terumah is only rabbinic, so in that case, Rabbi Yosef is going to be more lenient. But this is from the Torah. Mani. Lo Rabbi Yosef and lo Rabbi Yehuda. It's not the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, it's not the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda, because if it's Rabbi Yehuda, ha'amar lechatchila nami lo yatsa. You just told me, nami yatsa, sorry. You just told me that Rabbi Yehuda does not require this even lechatchila. So he wouldn't require, if he doesn't require by Shema, that you have to hear yourself even before the fact, he wouldn't require for Berachot Hamazon. Rabbi Yosef, if you want to tell me it's Rabbi Yosef, di'avid nami lo. Rabbi Yosef says after the fact, if you didn't fulfill the obligation. But this Braita says that if you don't say Berachot Hamazon to your heart, and if you do, you fulfill. It can't be Rabbi Yosef. So we need to tweak someone. Fine. Elamai Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. I'm going to go back on my opinion about Rabbi Yehuda. Before I thought Rabbi Yehuda doesn't require it even l'chatchila. Now I say, okay, because of this Braita, maybe he does require it. Because this opinion of this Braita by Berachot Hamazon has to be one of them, so I'm going to say it's Rabbi Yehuda. Elamai Rabbi Yehuda. V'di'avid in l'chatchila no. Rabbi Yehuda, as it says by Berachot Hamazon, di'avid, if I said it already without hearing, it's fine. But before the fact, I require that. Fine. But now you have another problem. Ready? Here's the next problem. Elahatatani Rabbi Yehuda, Berei Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. But I have a question about Rabbi Yehuda. So where we are up to now is we want to say that Rabbi Yehuda says requires before the fact, but b'di'avad he says it's fine if you didn't hear yourself. For Shema and for Berachot Hamazon, you want to line up Rabbi Yehuda and say lechatchila you're required, b'di'avad it's fine if you didn't. But now you have a Braita that Rabbi Yehuda is saying cheresh hamdaber ve'eno shomea, a cheresh that speak but can't hear himself. Torah lechatchila. Go ahead, do it. You can take off terumaser even lechatchila. Can that be Rabbi Yehuda? No, because you just established that Rabbi Yehuda says before the fact you should say Shema while you hear yourself, and you should say Berachot Hamazon when you hear yourself. You shouldn't say it to yourself. So then why are you telling the deaf guy that he could go do it before the fact? That's Rabbi Yehuda. Mani, who is that? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, v'lo Rabbi Yosef. So it can't be Rabbi Yehuda, it can't be Rabbi Yosef. Now you keep going back and forth by finding another example. We just found another example of someone that allows you a cheresh, a deaf person, to take it off of the lechatchila. So Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, ha'amar di'avid in lechatchila lo. You just in your last line differentiated and said after the fact it's fine, but before the fact you require it. Here, this Braita is saying before the fact the deaf person could go ahead and do it. So it can't be him. Rabbi Yosef, but if it's Rabbi Yosef, ha'amar di'avid namilo. You said even after the fact it's not okay. Here you're permitting a deaf person to go do it lechatchila. So it can't be Rabbi Yosef either. So ela leolam Rabbi, fine. I'm going to go back and go, I'm going to flip flop again. I'm going to say it's Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda, even the lechatchila doesn't require you. Even before the fact. he doesn't require you to hear yourself. And he's the one that says a deaf person could go ahead lechatchila and take off truma. So what are you going to do with the other cases of Birkat Hamazon? Here's what you're going to do. V'lo kashya, hadideh, hadrabeh. Rabbi Yehuda is once quoting his opinion, and another time he's quoting the opinion of his rabbi, which now means you're bringing a third opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says no requirement, even lechatchila. Rabbi Yosef says it's so required that even b'diavad it's a problem if you didn't do it. And Rabbi Yehuda's rabbi is in the middle, that you should do it, but if you don't, it's okay. Who is that? Let's read it. That we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yehuda says, quoting Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Hakrei Shema, one who reads the Shema, listen to the formulation. You're reading the Shema, Sarich sheyashmi'a le'ozno. You must hear it. Shneimar Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear it. So that's a lechatchila formulation that you're required to. That Rabbi Yehuda, even lechatchila doesn't require it, but Rabbi Yehuda's rabbi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, requires lechatchila. Amar lo Rabbi Meir. And now that we quoted that, we're going to keep going with Rabbi Meir. There's another opinion that says Harei Omer. But what do you mean by Shema he has to have kavanah? It says in the Shema, Harei Omer Asher Anochi Misavecha Hayom Al Levavecha. It says about the Shema that it has to be in your heart. Achar kavanat halev hen hen advarim. Rabbi Meir says the entire Shema is just something that you have to have in your heart. You don't need to hear yourself. So we just brought a new rabbi, Rabbi Meir, who says that even lechatchila, you don't need to hear yourself. So the Gemara says, where do you pull Rabbi Meir out of your back pocket? We had this whole time, we're trying to work Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef. And we're saying, okay, who fits with Trumot? Rabbi Yosef. Okay, but who fits with Birkat Hamazon? Okay, it can't be. So take Rabbi Yosef back and I'll put Rabbi Yehuda here. Okay, who fits with the Cheresh that I let you lechatchila do it? Like, okay, that has to be Rabbi Yehuda. I need a third opinion. Okay, let's say to Rabbi Yehuda's rabbi. And as you're quoting Rabbi Yehuda's rabbi, you bring another opinion of Rabbi Meir, who says, even lechatchila, you don't need to hear yourself. Oh, so the Gemara says, Hashta da'atit lahachi. Once you introduced Rabbi Meir into the evidence, afilu tema Rabbi Yehuda k'Rav Esrieleh, then you can then say that Rabbi Yehuda holds like his own rabbi. That lechatchila requires it, but the evet doesn't require it. V'lo kasher ha Rabbi Meir ha Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Meir is the one that says even lechatchila you don't need it, because he says Shema you don't need to hear yourself. It's all in the heart. Okay, so what we end off is as follows. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to say Rabbi Meir extreme, Rabbi Yosef extreme, Rabbi Yehuda in the middle. Rabbi Meir says, do you need to hear yourself? No, even lechatchila. By Shema, you don't need to. Why? Because Shema says the words of the heart. It's the heart. It doesn't have to be words of the ear. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yosef on the flip side says, do you have to hear yourself? Yes. And what happens if I said it and I didn't hear myself? Even still no good. That's even b'diavad. Why? Because it's Shema, you have to hear. So he focuses on the ear and says, I have to no matter what. Rabbi Meir focuses on the heart and says, you don't have to. And Rabbi Yehuda is in the middle. Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that you should try to, but if you didn't, you fulfill your obligation. Hold on a second. But as we break this down, now we could say what every opinion of our Mishnah is. Our Mishnah is a b'diavad case. So since our Mishnah is a b'diavad case, you're going to with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yehuda says you fulfill, Rabbi Yosef says you didn't fulfill. Okay? Then the Braita, the Mishnah that talks about Masechet Trumot, that says the deaf person shouldn't be the one to take off Trumah, but if you did, it's fine. What that's really saying is that you should hear yourself, but if you don't, it's okay. So who is that?
Yeah,
That could be Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, exactly. That could be Rabbi Yehuda. It even works to say it's Rabbi Yosef, because Rabbi Yosef makes the distinction between the right and the Rabbanan. So that one could be either. Then when you say Berachot Hamazon, by Berachot Hamazon you have a b'diavad. It's okay, but the lechatchila you need to hear yourself. Who is that? Rabbi Yehuda. That which one? Berachot Hamazon. Because Rabbi Yosef by Shema says even after the fact, even b'diavad, if you didn't hear yourself, no good. And so by Berachot Hamazon, which is which is not rabbinic, it's d'oraita, then even after the fact, he would say is no good. The bracha of Birkat Hamazon is the mitzvah of Birkat Hamazon. It's what's unique about Birkat Hamazon is that the bracha is the mitzvah. So when the Torah says "V'achata v'savata u'be'arachta," reciting the bracha is the mitzvah. Whereas by teruma, reciting the bracha is not the mitzvah. Separating the teruma is the mitzvah. Reciting the bracha is rabbinic. So that's why Birkat Hamazon has to be Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. What about the braita of a deaf person that says even before the fact, go ahead, take up teruma? Who is that? Rabbi Meir. That could be the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So that's how we line up these three opinions. Okay. Okay. Good. You want to know halacha l'maaseh? Halacha l'maaseh, we're going to say like Rabbi Yehuda, where l'chatchila you're required to, but the avad it's fine if you didn't. Okay. We'll see that. We'll see that at the end. Because the thing is, we're only halfway through with the Gemara. The Gemara is now going to insert one more piece of evidence for the jury. So we have Shema Yisrael, we have Teruma, we have Birkat Hamazon, we had another case of Teruma, another opinion of Teruma, and there's one more case where we have to introduce, and that is Kiryat Megillah. Okay? I want to go ahead, I want to make sure we cover this. I'll take your question and then we're going to do it.
Is there a mitzvah where there's an act that has to be done and then there's a bracha that has to be said, or both are d'oraisa?
Excellent question. The only brachot, so there's machloket, by the way, about like what brachot are d'oraita. According to our halacha, is what we'll say is Birkat Hamazon after the fact and Birkat Torah before the fact. Saying Birkat Torah will also say is a mitzvah from the Torah, but I guess to answer yourself simply is to say no. Right, so Birkat Hamazon is the only deoraita bracha, whereas Birkat Torah is to say the bracha before you study Torah. But I guess that could be another example. Birkat Torah. Okay, let's go. Last case. I know you might get confused because the Mishnah is going to introduce this new case, and as it's introducing this new case, it's going to do the whole calculation again. It's almost gonna forget we brought in Rabbi Meir, and it's gonna say, I'm only working with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef. I'm gonna try to make Rabbi Yehuda fit this way, it doesn't work. Make Rabbi Yosef fit this way, it doesn't work. Okay, maybe it's gonna be Rabbi Yehuda in the name of his rabbi. Once you introduce the Rabbi Yehuda in the name of his rabbi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you also introduce Rabbi Meir, and then you say, oh, you brought the wild card Rabbi Meir out of here. Fine, everything works out. So we're gonna have this flow one more time after we introduce the Mishnah on Masechet Megillah. Back to the OGs. Who learned Masechet Megillah with me? Wow, only Itai.
There for the end.
You were there. I think you were there. Just say you were
And
there.
me,
Who? Who's that?
Evan.
Evan, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Look at that. Okay, very good. Here's the OG back. We're going all the way back for you guys. Throwback Tuesday. Man Tana. Who is the opinion? Oh, sorry, I skipped the line. Tana Natam, we learned in the Mishnah. In Masechet Megillah, Hakol kesherim nikrot et Megillah. Everyone can read the Megillah. You could have anyone read the Megillah. Chutz, except for Cheresh, Shoteh, V'Katan. Cheresh is someone who is deaf. Shoteh is someone who is deranged, crazy. Yeah. Imbecile. It just means someone that is deranged. Sorry? Shoteh, yeah. Yeah, but it's not like an idiot. It's like someone that there's developmental issue. Correct. And Katan, a minor. So you could send up Kohen, Levi, Israel. You could send up a woman. A woman is allowed to do Kriyat HaMegillah. This is the halacha l'maaseh. A woman is allowed to do Kriyat HaMegillah. But there are three exceptions: Charesh, Shoteh, V'Katan. Minor is under bar mitzvah. Correct. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'Katan. Rabbi Yehuda comes in and says, I allow a minor. Okay. So you see the flow. Cheresh is not allowed to read the Megillah. Now, obviously, we're talking about a Cheresh that's Hamdaber ve'enu shomea, that could speak and can't hear. Because if you were talking about a Cheresh that can't speak, there's no saying, oh, he can't read it. Yeah, he can't read it. Like what? It's not a halachic discussion. It's a practical discussion. So halachic discussion means you're talking about a Cheresh Hamdaber ve'enu shomea. He speaks and he can't hear, and the Mishnah says he can't do it.
How many times would be able to hold it? Like it's just mentally not.
Yeah.
He's not five, and he's not. I mean, it's just like.
Correct, right? So right, exactly. Whose opinion is this? We're now going to say, all right. So a cheresh cannot fulfill his obligation of Kriyat Megillah. So we're going to try to line this up. Is this Rabbi Yosef or is this Rabbi Yehuda? Okay. But one important caveat about this Mishnah that you didn't have before is our Mishnah says, and Rabbi Yehuda permits a katan. So from that second clause, what does that tell you about the first clause of our Mishnah? First opinion says, anyone can read the Megillah except for a Charesh, Shoteh, Katan. And Rabbi Yehuda says katan is okay. So, okay, so let's go ahead and see the Gemara's flow. Okay, we should already have the pieces, the building blocks. We understand the flow. Let's go. Man tana charesh di'avid nami lo. So you guys tell me what you think. Which opinion is it that a charesh, even after the fact, will not fulfill his obligation? Who do you think that would be? Will not. Tana charesh di'avad nami lo. Even after the fact, will not fulfill his obligation. Mr. Mordechai tells us, Rabbi Yosef, right? Amar Rav Matna, also Rav Matna, Rav Matna and Rav Mordechai. Rav Matna says, Rabbi Yosef, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. Did not, because look, we had our Mishnah. HaKoret Shema v'lo yishmel le'ozno, yatsa, he fulfilled his obligation. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef omer lo yatsa. Rabbi Yosef is the one that says that if you didn't hear yourself saying Shema, even b'diavad, you did not fulfill your obligation. He's the one that's saying by a cheresh, even b'diavad, did not fulfill his obligation. Perfect. Lines up very nicely. Not so fast. How do you know that our Mishnah is talking about? How do you know this Mishnah Mesechah Megillah that says everyone can read the Megillah except for a cheresh? Who said that's a b'diavad case? Maybe that's the Chatchila telling you a cheresh shouldn't do it, but after the fact it's okay. So who says that this is even a b'diavad case and it has to be Rabbi Yosef? Who said our Mishnah is Rabbi Yosef and it's a case of after the fact? Maybe the Mishnah of Masechet Megillah that says anyone can read except for a cheresh is talking about the Chatchila. Before the fact, you shouldn't send up a cheresh to read it. But maybe after the fact, all of a sudden you find out that person that just read the Chazan, that person is actually deaf. Okay, b'diavad, it's fine. Our Mishnah doesn't say b'diavad, it's a problem. What did our Mishnah say? Mesechet Megillah. It says everyone is permitted to read the Megillah except for someone who's deaf. Okay, maybe that's a lechatchila formulation. But b'diavad, maybe the opinion would say it's fine. Maybe that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. You know what? The Gemara is going to say, I hear you from the verbs. It doesn't sound. It doesn't have to be after the fact. It could be lechatchila. But lo sakadaitach. But don't say that. Why? Diktani cheresh dumya deshoteh v'katan. Because the author of the Mishnah groups cheresh, shoteh, and katan together. Now, if someone hears from a shoteh even after the fact, there's no way that he can fulfill his obligation because he's not chayav. Someone hears from a katan after the fact, there's no way he can fulfill his obligation. So someone who hears from a cheresh, it's got to be the same thing. You can't distinguish and say cheresh is only a problem lechatchila, but b'diavad is okay, whereas shoteh katan is a problem lechatchila and b'diavad. So ma shoteh v'katan diavid nami lo, av cheresh diavid nami lo. Don't distinguish and say this cheresh is only a lechatchila requirement that he shouldn't do it, but after the fact you fulfill the obligation. Why? Because that's not the case by cheresh and shoteh. So the Gemara says, no, why not? Maybe not. Maybe the cheresh is only the lechatchila requirement. The shoteh v'katan is even b'diavad requirement. The Gemara is going to say, okay, fine, that didn't work, but I have another proof that my Mishnah is not Rabbi Yehuda. I'm going to scroll up. I want you to look at this Mishnah. Okay? Look at this Mishnah here. How do you know that the first opinion
Sorry,
is
Rabbi, could you put it on the screen?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Evan.
Thank you.
Evan, how far back was this? Did I not share? None of this? Okay, let's go ahead and read the Mishnah and go through the flow, okay? And because it's important. Everyone pay attention to the Mishnah. Tananatam, we learned in the Mishnah, Hakol k'shrim nikrot the Megillah. Everyone may read the Megillah, chutz b'cheresh shoteh v'katan, except for one who is deaf, one who is deranged, and one who is a minor, meaning under bar mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan, but Rabbi Yehuda permits a katan. What does that mean? What does that mean about that first opinion?
He argues with the first opinion.
Exactly. Rabbi Yehuda is coming in and saying, no, I disagree with you about the minor. Minor is fine. That sounds like the first opinion is not Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, that's very important. But before that, Let's just do it for Evan's case, out of respect for the people on Zoom. I'll just read this quickly. Man Tana Cheresh Diavid Namilo. Whose opinion is it in this Masechet Megillah that says even after the fact, one who is deaf does not fulfill his obligation? Amar Rav Matnan Rabbi Yosei. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yosei. Did not, as we learned in our Mishnah, Hakoret Shema v'lo yishmi'a le'ozno. Someone read Shema, didn't hear himself. Yatza, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says after the fact it's fine. Rabbi Yosef Omer lo yatza. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you did not fulfill your obligation. So Rabbi Yosef is saying after the fact you did not fulfill your obligation. That lines up with Cheresh that after the fact he did not fulfill his obligation. Then the Gemara then asks, Mimai Rabbi Yosef v'diavid namilo. Who says the Mishnah Masechet Megillah is Rabbi Yosef and it's a b'diavad case? Dilma Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe the Mishnah in Masechet Megillah is only telling you before the fact. Before the fact, the Cheresh shouldn't be the one to do it. Hadi Avid, but after the fact, Shapir Dami, he does fulfill his obligation, and then it could be Rabbi Yehuda. Don't think that Cheresh is only a requirement that he shouldn't do lechatchila, but b'diavad it's fine. Why? Cheresh dumei the shoteh v'katan, because it's taught as part of a group. Cheresh, shoteh, and katan. A shoteh even before the fact, after the fact is no good. Katan before the fact, after the fact is no good. So Cheresh also. Ma shoteh v'katan diavid namilo. Just as a shoteh katan, a katan after the fact would be no good. Av cheresh nami diavid namilo. Even a cheresh, you would say, even after the fact is a problem. So since that's the case, then I would say our Mishnah cannot be Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara pushes back and says, "V'dilma hakadiyita v'hakadiyita." Maybe not. Maybe cheresh is its own case, meaning it's only a lechatchila requirement for the cheresh not to do it. But if he does it, he fulfills his obligation. Everyone fulfills his obligation. V'hakadiyita. And the case of cheresh and shoten katan is different. Maybe it's different rules. So then the Gemara says the obvious question of umi matzit l'okma Rabbi Yehuda. Can you possibly say the Mishnah Masechet Megillah is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda? But the second phrase says Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan. Rabbi Yehuda argues with the first opinion and says that katan is permitted, right? The first line of the Mishnah says anyone can read Megillah except for cheresh, shoteh, katan. Rabbi Yehuda says, what are you talking about? No, katan is fine. If that's Rabbi Yehuda talking, arguing with that first opinion, then the first opinion can't be Rabbi Yehuda. Michlad dereisha lav Rabbi Yehuda. That must mean that first phrase of the Mishnah is not Rabbi Yehuda. It could still be Rabbi Yehuda. How? V'dilma kula Rabbi Dahi. The entire Mishnah of Megillah is Rabbi Yehuda. Utrei gavni katan. And there's two types of katan. The first line he's talking about one type of katan, and the second line he's talking about another katan. The chasure mechzera, and there's some words missing. The haki katani. This is how you should read it. You ready? Hakol keshrim nikrotat Megillah. Everyone may read the Megillah. Chutz mecharesh shoteh v'katan, except for a deaf person, a deranged person, and a minor. Bameh devarim amurim. What type of young minor? B'katan shelo higia lechinuch, a young child that hasn't even reached the age of chinuch, of training him in mitzvot. A 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Ava katan shehigia lechinuch, but a katan that is getting to the age where he's training, let's say a 12-year-old or even an 11-year-old. Then in his case, even before the fact, it would be permitted. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Because Rabbi Yehuda permits a katan to read a Megillah. Why? Because the whole thing of Megillah is rabbinic. If the whole requirement of Megillah is rabbinic, it's not from the Torah. So if it's rabbinic, what's the issue with a minor? That he's not obligated from the Torah? Okay, no one is obligated from the Torah. Even the 20-year-old is obligated in reading the Megillah the same way the 12-year-old is, right? Because they're both rabbinic. So because of that, Rabbi Yehuda says katan is allowed to, but only a katan shehigia lechinuch. So what ends up happening is your Mishnah Masechet Megillah could really be Rabbi Yehuda, and it could be a lechatchila din. B'may okim yeah. Sorry, abidiyavadin. So how do you want to establish this Mishnah Masechet Megillah? Sorry, I'm going to go a few more minutes. Is that okay? I think we have to just get to this point. It's going to be important to get to this, and we'll stop in a few more minutes. So how do you want to establish this Mishnah Masechet Megillah? Rabbi Yehuda, say it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, v'di'avid in lechatchila lo. And he's saying after the fact, a cheresh fulfills his obligation. It's just before the fact that he requires you to hear it. So now you're going to paint Rabbi Yehuda as this middle opinion, where lechatchila he requires you to hear it, but if you don't hear it, it's fine. Fine. Ela hadatani Rabbi Yehuda b'rei Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, but we have an issue, and now this issue is going to be Braita we already quoted. The issue is cheresh hamdaber ve'eno shomea torem lechatchila mani. We have a Braita that says that a deaf person can take off truma lechatchila even before the fact. So there's no requirement to hear yourself. So if you're going to paint Rabbi Yehuda as this opinion that says before the fact I require it, after the fact I don't, so then what do you do with the Braita that says even before the fact I don't require you to hear yourself by truma of a deaf person? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbi Yosef. It's not Rabbi Yehuda, it's not Rabbi Yosef. If it's Rabbi Yehuda, di'avid in lechatchila lo. You establish that Rabbi Yehuda says that it's only after the fact that it's permitted, but before the fact you have to hear yourself. Rabbi Yosef, di'avid namilo. Rabbi Yosef, even after the fact, if you didn't hear yourself, it's a problem, even with the avad. Elamai, so I have to change the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, va'afila lechatchila nami. So maybe this Braita is following Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda is saying you don't need to hear yourself even the Chatchila and the Hadatanya, but then you have a problem. Berkat Hamazon. Lo yivarech adam berkat Hamazon b'libo. A person should not say berkat Hamazon in his heart. V'im birech yatsa. And if he does, he fulfills the obligation. Mani. If you want to tell me that Rabbi Yehuda is in this middle opinion that says I require the Chatchila but not b'di'evad, so what do you do with the Braita that talks about a cheresh, a deaf person, that says even the Chatchila you don't need to hear yourself? If you want to make that Rabbi Yehuda, then what do you do with the Braita that says Berkat Hamazon, I require the Chatchila to hear yourself, but the Evid you don't need to hear yourself? So what do you do? Mani, who is that? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbi Yosef. It's not Rabbi Yehuda because you just put Rabbi Yehuda at this end. Rabbi Yehuda ha'amar afilu Chatchila nami. He says even the Chatchila you don't have to hear yourself. Even Rabbi Yosef ha'amar afilu di'avad nami lo. He's saying that even after the fact you have to hear yourself. So which one is it? You have three views and you have only two opinions. So you guys should already know the answer. Well, first we're going to go through the rabbi role. We're going to put Rabbi Yehuda at the end and say, even before the fact, he doesn't require you to hear it. So what do you do with the Berkat Hamazon case? One is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says even the Chatchila you don't need to hear it. The other one is the opinion of his rabbi. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braita, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of his rabbi Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Hakaret Shema Sarich Le'ashmiya Le'ozono. Before the fact that Chatchila, when you read Shema, you have to hear yourself. Shneimar Shema Yisrael, as it says, you have to hear yourself. Amar lo Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir argues with him and says, Harei Omer, Asher Anochi Misavecha Hayom Alavavecha. I'm commanding you to say Shema in your hearts. Achar Kavanat Alev Heinen Devarim. It's only about the heart that matters. You don't need to hear yourself. So through this, I got another opinion of Rabbi Meir. So once you do that, once you've arrived at the opinion of Rabbi Meir that he requires even before the fact you don't need to hear yourself. You could even put Rabbi Yehuda in the middle and say Rabbi Yehuda requires it like Berkat Hamazon. The Chatchila you should hear yourself, but Diavad, if you didn't, it's fine. And Rabbi Meir is the one that says L'Chatchila you don't have to hear yourself. He's the one that says the deaf person can go ahead and take off truma lechatchila. So then we have again Rabbi Yehuda is in the middle. Rabbi Meir is on this side where he says lechatchila you don't even need to, and Rabbi Yosef says the opinion at the end that says even b'diavad you have to hear yourself, and if you didn't, you do not fulfill your obligation. Okay. Amar Rav Chasta, Amar Rav Shela. This is for Rama. Rama wanted to know what's the question, what's halacha. So here we go, Rama. Halacha, and after this we're going to end. Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The opinion is like Rabbi Yehuda. She'amar mishum Elazar ben Azariah, who said in the name of his rabbi, which was the lechatchila b'diavad case, which says lechatchila I require you to hear yourself, but if you didn't hear yourself b'diavad, you fulfill the obligation. V'halacha Rabbi Yehuda, and the opinion is like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. So Rav Chista just said a redundant statement. You see what he's saying? Let's just have some fun. The middle one that says the chatchila you're required to hear yourself, but b'diavad if you didn't hear yourself, you fulfilled your obligation. So what does he say? Rav Shela says halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda that says in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And what else does he say? He also says halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. What are you talking about? It's like after all of this confusion, I just want someone to give me a simple explanation to me what the halacha is like. And what does he do? Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Elazar ben Azariah and the name of Halacha himself. What? So now the Gemara is going to say there's a reason why he's doing this. I don't know how to clear this annotation. Here we go. The Gemara says like this. utzricha. And he needed to say both of this to be very clear so that you know which Rabbi Yehuda I'm talking about. Because I had a lot of possibilities of what Rabbi Yehuda is. Either Rabbi Yehuda doesn't even require the chatchila, or he requires the chatchila, but he doesn't require the avad. Utzricha, I needed to say both. The iyash meina halacha Rabbi Yehuda. If Rabbi Chasta, whatever your statement said, the rule is like Rabbi Yehuda. I don't know what I'm not sure what he says. I would have said that that's talking about even before the fact. You don't require to hear at all, like what we said, Rabbi Meir at the end. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda says the same thing. So Kamash Malan halacha Rabbi Yehuda Shamar Mishum Elazar ben Azariah. That's why you say explicitly that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who says explicitly, you need to hear the Shema. You need to hear Shema because the Shema Yisrael. And further, and if you would have just said, if you would have just quoted the case of him in the name of his rabbi, I would have thought that you have to hear yourself, even b'diavad. It might have thought that it's like slipping into Rabbi Yosef all of a sudden. That if you said Shema and you didn't hear yourself, eno takana, then what you did even after the fact is a problem. So we're making it clear that no, Rabbi Yehuda is explicit in our Mishnah. What did he say in our Mishnah? So I want to be very clear. When I tell you halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, I'm telling you, look at our Mishnah Masechet Berachot that we just learned tonight, and it says, you read Shema, you didn't hear it? Rabbi Yehuda says, Yatsa. That's after the fact. And what do I know about before the fact? I say, Rabbi Yehuda, halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and it says in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, because what does he say there? I want to read it to you again, and I want you to see the formulation. Here it is. Annotate. Let's have some fun again. It says here, the Tanya Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Hakoreh et Shema Sarich Lashmiya Leozno. Jaden, remember what I said about the word Sarich? Remember this? Sarich is a before the fact expression. You need to do this. That's before the fact. So when it says the word sarich, it's telling you lachatchila, you need to hear yourself, but you don't know what he holds with the avad. And then in our Mishnah, when it says you said Shema and you didn't hear yourself, yatsa after the fact expression. So by saying the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and the halacha is by Rabbi Yehuda, what Rav Chistan, the name of Rav Shila, is doing is he's telling you lechatchila like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that you need to hear yourself. B'diavad, if you didn't hear yourself like Rabbi Yehuda, that says yatsa, you fulfill your obligation. This is in fact the halacha l'maaseh, as we just said, that when you say Shema, you have to hear yourself. But if you did not hear yourself because you're at the train station, or because you shalom bayit and you were scared and you ended up saying it and you didn't hear yourself and you're saying, do I have to go back and say it again? You say, no, you fulfill the obligation. Okay? I know we did a lot tonight. I think really there's two main things I want you to remember tonight. Number one, as you do your homework, be clear on the difference between lechatchila and b'diavad. Okay, and I'm going to ask someone in the group to write this up. Andrew, maybe you want to write it up, or David Delamani, or Josh, or someone write this up. It should be very clear. What is the difference between lechatchila and b'diavad? The one thing I would add to my chart that I didn't, and I'm going to let you guys do the work, is the formulations. Okay, Jaden, what's a formulation of how you would say that this is the indication that this is a lechatchila rule? Sarich, you need to do this. That sounds like lechatchila. Or you gave another word before? Chayav, you must do this. And Itai, what's an expression of a word that based on this word, you know it's talking about a b'di'eved rule? Yatsa, or lo yatsa. You fulfill your obligation, or you do not fulfill your obligation. That's a clue that it's a b'di'eved case. These are important skills for all of Mishnayot, for all of Gemarot. It's important to know. It's important to know. Am I talking about lechatchila? Am I talking about b'di'eved? So this is very important. Number one, concept of lechatchila and b'di'eved. I think I want everyone to be very clear on. Number two, halacha l'maaseh. When you say Shema, you have to hear yourself. Done. Okay. Birkat Hamazon also. You should hear yourself. Megillah, you have to hear yourself. You're gonna don't ask me about Kabbalah right now, okay? All right, Rama, the weekly Kabbalah thing. There is a lot of discussion about the Amidah. Okay, we'll get up to it at another time. Okay, but I mean that whether you should hear yourself or not, machloket between halacha and kabbalah. Okay, between the Ari and thing. Yes, question.
I'll buy an example. What if you know you're gonna whisper it?
Yeah.
Is that, if you have the intention of whispering and not hearing?
No, so in the Shalom Bayit example, you should go to the other room so that you could hear yourself. But let's say, again, this is going back to the same core of don't abuse the b'diavad by saying, I'm gonna do it lechatchila. But yeah, it's a good question, okay?
Now for all of us, ignore the other.
There's no more b'diavad, everyone knows the halachot, so you should all do it, exactly. That's it. The more you learn, the more your life becomes a lechatchila life. Exactly, exactly.
Fine.
Exactly.
But the second you know it's video, you can't do it again.
Hazak Baruch, everyone. Have a good night.